It's a Saturday afternoon in Manchester city centre. 50,000 people are walking down Market Street. The trams are running, the Arndale is packed. Outside the printworks, someone is busking, playing an Oasis song on an acoustic guitar. A crowd has stopped to listen. This is Manchester today. Loud, fast, confident. Britain's second city. A place that never quite accepted that London gets to be first. But to understand why Manchester is the way it is, defiant, inventive, furious, creative, you need to go back. A long way back. Back before the music, before the football, before the factories. Back to a river crossing in a swamp. And a story that will take nearly 2,000 years to tell. Using AI technology to reconstruct historical photographs and engravings, we're going to watch Manchester transform from a muddy Roman outpost into the city that changed the world, and nearly broke itself doing it. We'll see cotton make this city the richest place on earth. We'll see the people who built that wealth live and die in conditions that would make you weep. We'll follow a moral reckoning that stretched from the slums of Ancoats to the plantations of Alabama. And we'll watch a city that lost everything find itself again. In music, in football, in bloody-minded refusal to give up. This is the complete story of Manchester. Let's begin. It's the year 79 AD. The Roman governor Gnaeus Julius Agricola is pushing the empire's frontier northward into what will one day be called England. His legions need a fort, something to control the roads between the great fortresses at Chester and York. They choose a sandstone bluff overlooking the point where two rivers meet, the Medlock and the Irwell. The local Brigantes tribe has a name for this place, something that translates, roughly, as breast-shaped hill. In Latin, the Romans turn this into Mamucium. The fort they build here houses around 500 auxiliary soldiers. It is not glamorous. This is frontier territory, cold, wet, far from the warmth of the Mediterranean. The soldiers come from Spain, from North Africa, from modern-day Syria. They build their rectangular fort with earthen ramparts and wooden palisades. Later, they rebuild in stone. Outside the walls, a small civilian settlement grows up. Traders, craftspeople, the families of soldiers. A bathhouse is built. There is a mansio, a Roman inn for official travelers. Pottery is made, grain is ground. A few hundred people scratching out a life at the edge of empire. For 3 centuries, Mamucium sits here. Then, in 410 AD, Rome withdraws. The legions leave. The official infrastructure collapses. Within a generation, the stone buildings are being stripped for materials. The roads are cracking. The civilian settlement empties. The Romans leave behind stones, place names, and a road network that will shape this region for 1,000 years. But Mamucium itself fades into nothing. We know almost nothing about Manchester between Roman withdrawal and the Norman conquest. The name shifts. Mamucium becomes Mamacista in Old English. Eventually, Manchester. When William the Conqueror's surveyors compile the Domesday Book in 1086, Manchester gets barely a mention. It is part of the Manor of Salford. Population, perhaps a few hundred. It is nothing special, just another cluster of wooden buildings in the northwest of England. But slowly, almost invisibly, it begins to grow. In 1222, the lord of the manor receives permission to hold a market. Markets mean trade. Trade means money. The settlement expands around the market cross. A parish church, St. Mary's, on the site of earlier Saxon worship, the building that will eventually become Manchester Cathedral, rises on the bluff above the Irwell. By 1400, perhaps 1,500 people live here. The town is surrounded by marshland. The rivers flood constantly. It is agricultural, muddy, and unremarkable. What Manchester has, what it has always had, is position. It sits at the center of a web of roads and rivers connecting the wool-producing uplands of Lancashire and Yorkshire to the ports of the west coast. Wool flows in, cloth flows out. It is small scale, done in homes and workshops, not factories, but it is something. The town survives the Black Death, the Wars of the Roses, the dissolution of the monasteries. During the English Civil War of the 1640s, Manchester backs Parliament against the King. Royalist forces attack the town in 1642. The defenders, mostly local militia with makeshift weapons, hold them off. Manchester begins to develop a reputation, a place that takes a side and holds it. By 1650, the population has reached perhaps 5,000. A proper grammar school, some wealth from textiles, a growing stubbornness. But it is still not special. Not yet. Everything changes in the 1700s. And the change begins not in Manchester, but on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Cotton fabric imported from India becomes fashionable in England in the late 17th century. It is lighter than wool, easier to wash, and takes dye beautifully. The problem: Britain doesn't grow cotton. It must be imported as raw fibre, then spun and woven into cloth. And here is where Manchester's story becomes inseparable from one of history's greatest crimes. The cotton flowing into Manchester comes from plantations in the American South and the Caribbean. Those plantations are worked by enslaved Africans, men, women and children, bought, sold and worked to death as property. The mechanism is called the triangular trade. Ships leave British ports, Liverpool, Bristol, London, carrying manufactured goods to West Africa. Those goods are exchanged for enslaved people. Those people are transported across the Atlantic in conditions of calculated horror, packed into ships, chained below decks, many dying on the crossing. The survivors are sold to plantation owners. The ships return to Britain loaded with raw cotton, sugar and tobacco. Manchester sits at the end of this chain. The raw cotton arrives, the mills process it. The cloth is sold around the world, including, grotesquely, back to plantation owners to clothe the people they have enslaved. This is the foundation on which modern Manchester is built. Not ingenuity alone, not hard work alone. Ingenuity and hard work, yes, but powered by a system of human bondage on the other side of the world. Remember that, we'll come back to it. Lancashire, with its damp climate, perfect for keeping cotton thread from snapping during spinning, becomes the center of cotton manufacturing. At first, it is cottage industry. Spinners work at home. Weavers use hand looms in their cottages. Then the inventions begin. 1764, James Hargreaves invents the spinning jenny. One person can now spin multiple threads at once. 1769, Richard Arkwright patents the water frame, a spinning machine powered by water. 1779, Samuel Crompton combines both into the spinning mule. Suddenly, one machine does the work of dozens. These machines are too large for cottages. They need power. They need buildings. The factory is born. The first cotton mills rise in Manchester and the surrounding towns in the 1780s and 1790s. Multi-story brick buildings, hundreds of windows. Machines running day and night, powered by steam engines that fill the sky with black smoke. By 1800, Manchester is transforming from a market town into something the world has never seen, an industrial city. The population explodes. In 1772, roughly 25,000 people live here. By 1801, 70,000. By 1851, over 300,000. People flood in from the English countryside, from Ireland, especially after the catastrophic famine of the 1840s, from Wales, from Scotland. They come because the mills offer wages. However meager, however dangerous, wages are wages. What they find is this: workers live crammed into back-to-back terraced houses in courts so narrow that two people can barely pass each other. Entire families share single rooms. There is no sanitation, no clean water. The rivers run black with industrial waste. Disease spreads with terrible efficiency: cholera, typhus, tuberculosis. The mills run 12, 14, 16 hours a day. Children as young as 5 or 6 work the machines, their small hands useful for reaching under the looms to collect loose cotton. Accidents are constant, fingers are lost, arms are crushed, lungs fill with cotton dust until workers cough blood. The average life expectancy in 1840s, Manchester, 26 years. 26 years. People keep coming anyway. Because the alternative, starvation in the countryside, is worse. The wealth being generated is extraordinary. By the 1830s, Manchester and the surrounding towns produce most of the world's cotton goods. Cottonopolis, they call it. The irony is structural. Some of the most exploited workers in England are processing cotton picked by enslaved people in America. Neither group sees much of the wealth they create. The mill owners, the merchants, the middlemen, they are getting rich. Everyone else is fighting to survive, and more of Manchester's workers are beginning to ask why. By 1819, the frustration has reached breaking point. Manchester is one of England's largest and most economically important cities, and yet it sends not a single member to Parliament. The vast majority of working people have no vote, no voice, no say in the laws that govern their lives, set their wages, or send their children into the mills. On the 16th of August, 1819, a crowd gathers at St. Peter's Field, an open space in the centre of Manchester, roughly where the Midland Hotel stands today. 60,000 people, perhaps 80,000, men, women and children coming peacefully to hear the radical speaker, Henry Hunt, address them on the subject of parliamentary reform. They have come from across Lancashire, from Oldham, Rochdale, Stockport, Bury. Some have walked 10, 15, 20 miles. They are dressed in their Sunday best. Families have brought picnic baskets. The women's contingents carry banners reading, "Let us die like men and not be sold like slaves." There are musicians, there is singing. The mood is festive, disciplined, determined. The local magistrates, watching from a window of a nearby house, panic. The size of the crowd terrifies them. They decide Henry Hunt must be arrested. They send in the Manchester and Salford Yeomanry, a part-time cavalry force, many of them local businessmen and shopkeepers, many of them, by multiple accounts, drunk. Armed with sabres, ordered into a crowd of 80,000 people. What happens next takes less than 10 minutes. The yeomanry charge. They hack their way through the crowd toward the speaker's platform. People scream, people run, people fall and are trampled. The professional cavalry, the 15th Hussars, are then ordered in. The stampede intensifies. People are crushed against walls, against railings, against each other. When it is over, 15 people are dead. More than 600 are injured, many with saber wounds, cuts to heads, arms, shoulders. Among the dead, a 2-year-old child killed when his mother was knocked from her feet. Hunt and the other organizers are arrested. The magistrates are congratulated by the Home Secretary. The name comes almost immediately: Peterloo. A bitter, furious mockery of Waterloo, the great British victory of 4 years earlier. This was not a glorious battle. This was the British state sending cavalry into a peaceful crowd of working people, asking for basic political rights. The massacre does not win reform immediately. The government responds with further repression, the 6 acts, restricting public meetings and a free press. But Peterloo plants seeds that take years to flower. The memory of that day, the women in white dresses, the children, the picnic baskets and the sabres, becomes central to the growing movement for democratic reform. The Reform Act comes in 1832. Manchester finally gets its members of Parliament. The people who died at St. Peter's Field did not die for nothing. There is a memorial at the site today. Most people walk past it without noticing. The 12th of April, 1861. Confederate forces open fire on Fort Sumter, South Carolina. The American Civil War begins. Within months, the consequences reach Manchester. The Union Navy blockades Confederate ports. The cotton stops moving. By the spring of 1862, the Lancashire cotton famine has begun. The mills close, one by one, then dozens at a time. By the end of 1862, over 500,000 people in Lancashire are unemployed or working reduced hours. In Manchester and the surrounding towns, families that had almost nothing now have less than nothing. Soup kitchens open, charitable funds are established. They are nowhere near enough. Children beg in the streets, people sell everything they own. Men who had spent 20 years working the mills queue for parish relief with the blank faces of the utterly defeated. It is, by any measure, a humanitarian catastrophe. And into this catastrophe come the representatives of the Confederate States of America. They arrive with an offer: support the South. Use British political influence to break the Union blockade. Cotton will flow again. The mills will reopen. Your workers will have wages. Your children will eat. All you have to do, all that is required, is support the right of white Southern landowners to keep human beings as property. Manchester's mill workers are faced with a choice of almost unbearable clarity: support slavery and end their own suffering, or refuse and keep starving. On the 31st of December, 1862, New Year's Eve, thousands of people crowd into the Free Trade Hall on Peter Street, the same street a few hundred meters from where the Peterloo dead fell 43 years earlier. They debate, they argue, they vote, and then they draft a letter to the President of the United States. We are truly one people, though locally separate, and our interests are identified with yours. We joyfully honor you as the President, and the Congress with you, for the many decisive steps toward practically exemplifying your belief in the words of your great founders. All men are created free and equal. They are starving. Their children are hungry, and they choose to keep starving rather than support the enslavement of people they have never met, on a continent they will never visit, in a war that is not theirs. Abraham Lincoln receives the letter. He writes back, "I know and deeply deplore the sufferings which the working people of Manchester and in all Europe are called to endure in this crisis. I cannot but regard your decisive utterances upon the question as an instance of sublime Christian heroism, which has not been surpassed in any age or in any country. Sublime Christian heroism. These are people with an average life expectancy of 26 years, working 16-hour days for wages that barely cover the rent of a single room. And Lincoln calls them heroic. He is right. There is a statue of Lincoln in Manchester today. It stands in Lincoln Square, not far from the Free Trade Hall. He stands with one hand raised, not quite a wave, not quite a salute. Something between acknowledgement and gratitude. The cotton famine ends in 1865 when the Civil War does. The mills reopen, but Manchester has changed. The city's relationship with slavery is no longer invisible. The moral cost of Cottonopolis has been named, argued over, and, in one extraordinary winter, partially repaid. By the 1870s, Manchester is wealthy beyond imagination. The sixth largest city in Europe. Cotton has made fortunes, and some of that wealth, not enough, but some, goes into building something lasting. In 1877, the new town hall opens. Designed by Alfred Waterhouse, it is a Gothic revival masterpiece that dominates Albert Square. The great hall inside soars upward, decorated with murals by Ford Madox Brown, showing Manchester's history from Roman times to the industrial present. The building says, clearly, we are not just a factory town, we have arrived. By 1900, Manchester's population has reached 544,000. The city produces cotton goods for the entire world. The saying goes, what Manchester does today, the world does tomorrow. But the seeds of decline are already planted. American cotton mills are more efficient. Japanese mills are cheaper. Indian independence movements boycott British cotton, a deliberate, justified rejection of the colonial trade that enriched Manchester while impoverishing the subcontinent. Then comes the First World War. Thousands of Manchester men enlist. The PALS battalions, units formed from workmates and neighbours, suffer catastrophic casualties on the Somme. Entire streets lose their young men on the same day. Then the Second World War. In December 1940, German bombers attack Manchester for 2 consecutive nights. Over 600 people die. The historic centre is gutted. The Royal Exchange, the heart of the global cotton trade, is blown apart. After 1945, Manchester struggles. The textile industry continues its long decline. Mills close, jobs disappear, jobs. The city that made the modern world is being left behind by it. By the 1960s and 1970s, central Manchester is depressed. Victorian warehouses stand empty. The slum clearances demolish huge swathes of terraced housing. Entire communities destroyed in the name of modernization, replaced with tower blocks that quickly develop their own catastrophic problems. Then, in 1984, Margaret Thatcher's government faces the miners' strike. The industrial communities of the north, already weakened, are targeted systematically for destruction. Pit closures, steel plant closures, the deliberate dismantling of the economic base of the English working class. Manchester does not forget this. It never will. But Manchester still has music. It has always had music. But in the late 1970s and 1980s, something extraordinary happens. From the wreckage of the post-industrial city, from the empty mills and the depressed estates and the unemployment queues, emerges a sequence of bands that will change British music forever. The Buzzcocks, Joy Division, The Fall, The Smiths, Happy Mondays, The Stone Roses. There is something in the water, or rather, there is something in the absence of economic opportunity. The particular fury of a place that has been discarded. The specific creativity of people who have nothing to lose and everything to say. Then, in 1991, two brothers from Burnage, a South Manchester council estate, form a band. Liam and Noel Gallagher. They call themselves Oasis. What follows is the sound of a city that has been told it is finished, standing up and screaming, "We are not finished." Definitely Maybe, released in 1994, becomes the fastest-selling debut album in British history. What's the Story Morning Glory follows in 1995, eventually selling over 22 million copies worldwide. At their 1996 concerts at Nebworth Park, 250,000 people attend over 2 nights. 250,000 people singing songs written by two brothers from a Manchester council estate. The Gallaghers are not subtle, they are not modest, they are aggressively, almost violently Mancunian. The arrogance is a performance, but the pride underneath it is completely real. Manchester is not a second city. Manchester is the city. London can wait. And behind the music, the city is transforming. The massive Victorian warehouses of the Northern Quarter, relics of the cotton trade, empty for decades, are converted into apartments, bars, offices, recording studios. The once derelict Castlefield Basin becomes a heritage destination. Young people move into the city centre. Artists follow the cheap rents. Then, on the 15th of June, 1996, an IRA bomb explodes in the city centre, the largest bomb detonated on British soil since the Second World War. Over 200 people are injured. Miraculously, no one dies. The bomb destroys a significant portion of the city centre, the Arndale Centre, the Royal Exchange, hundreds of shops, and Manchester rebuilds, not just restoring what was there, but using the destruction as an opportunity to redesign the centre from scratch. A city that took a bomb and came back better than before. The Commonwealth Games in 2002, the Etihad Stadium, Media City in Salford, the BBC relocating significant operations to a former industrial dockland transformed into a gleaming modern quarter. The University of Manchester today educates over 40,000 students. The city's population is young, over 40% under 30. It is the fastest-growing major city in the UK outside London. Today, Manchester is a city of about 600,000 people. The Greater Manchester urban area contains over 3 million, Britain's second-largest conurbation. Cotton mills are luxury apartments. Victorian warehouses are tech startups and creative agencies. Spinning Fields, where textile warehouses once stood, is now a financial district with glass towers. The gay village on Canal Street is one of Europe's largest and most visible LGBTQ+ communities. Manchester United and Manchester City have fans in every country on earth. The rivalry between them defines the city as much as any factory or band. But challenges remain. Inequality is stark. Some areas of Greater Manchester are among the most deprived in England. Homelessness is visible on every street in the city centre. The gap between rich and poor is growing. On the 22nd of May, 2017, a terrorist attack at the Manchester Arena, a bomb detonated as thousands of young people, many of them children, leave an Ariana Grande concert, kills 22 people and injures hundreds more. The city's response is immediate and total. The worker bee, Manchester's symbol since the Industrial Revolution, representing the industriousness of its people, becomes a symbol of solidarity overnight. Tattoos appear on arms across the city. Murals go up on walls. Vigils are held in Albert Square. We stand together. From Roman fort to medieval market town, from Cottonopolis to the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, from Peterloo to the letter to Lincoln, from the cotton famine to Oasis, from an IRA bomb to the Commonwealth Games. Manchester has been built and destroyed and rebuilt so many times that destruction has become almost a form of self-expression. The city doesn't just recover, it uses the recovery to become something it couldn't have imagined before. The busker on Market Street is still playing, the crowd is still listening. That, more than any building or statistic, is what Manchester is. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe and let us know in the comments, which city should we walk through next? We'll see you in the past.